Okay, everybody, I just want to make sure to kind of give you an overview of what the final exam will look like so that you have a good idea of what you're getting yourself into with this exam. So the first thing you should know is that the exam will be split into parts. For instance, it will say exam 1 material. Okay, and there'll be questions, 1, 2, whatever, however many questions there are, but all of that is exam 1 material. And then it'll say exam 2 material, and so on and so forth. However many exams you have in your course, and it just depends on how the material was split up. Most of my classes either have 2 exams or 3 exams. And then if there was some new stuff tagged on at the end, there would be a new material section as well. Okay, so all of this together averages out to be 100% of your final exam. Okay, and then that will be whatever portion of your grade the final exam counts for if you take the exam. So, for instance, if your class has 25% of the grade is off of the final exam, then whatever you make on all of this together will be counted that way. However, I will also look at your lowest exam. Okay, whichever your lowest exam grade was. So for instance, some people, whenever they first take an instructor, they just don't know what to do, how to study, what the instructor will ask for, that kind of stuff. So some people really don't do well on exam number 1 because they just don't maybe quite know what to expect. So they maybe don't do as well as they would have. But then on exam 2, they're more prepared for the types of questions that the teacher will ask, and so they do better on those. So maybe exam 1 is your lowest test. I will look and figure out for your grades what your lowest test is. So it's not the same for everybody, but I'll figure it out. And then what I do is I will find an average grade for exam 1, and I'll find an average grade for exam 2, and I'll find an average grade for exam 3, and the new material is not averaged. Okay, so for instance, if your lowest test was exam 1, I don't know, maybe you missed it that day, maybe you were sick, maybe you were in a car accident, something like that, but for whatever reason, you never were able to take exam 1. If you have a 0 there, then I will average that portion of your grade, that portion of the final. And if it's higher, I will replace your lower test. Okay, now the good thing is it's not going to hurt you. Okay, so say that you made a 70 on exam 1 material, that was your lowest test, and you did the final, but whenever I look at the exam 1 portion of the final, you only get a 69 on that percentage of the grade. Okay, well, I'm not going to drop your grade. Okay, so exam 1, if you made a 70 the first time, then and you made a 69 on that portion of the final, then you'll keep your 70. That's fine. But if you made a 70 when you took exam 1, but whenever I grade that portion of the final and average it, you have an 80, then congratulations. I will change exam 1's grade and make it higher. So I will only to your betterment, not to your detriment. Okay, so I will make that better for you. This is how we replace the lowest test. And that's the other thing to think about. It's not an average between your exam 1 and the final exam portion. It is a replacement. Okay, so basically, if you do better on the final exam, then your lowest test doesn't count against you. Okay. If you don't do better on your final exam than your lowest portion, on that portion of the test for whatever your lowest grade was, it's okay. It doesn't count against you there, but you still have to think about this entire exam is 100% of the final exam grade. So if it was 25% was your final exam grade, then this whole thing counts. So taking the final exam is a big deal. You need to make sure that you're ready for that if you're taking the final exam, because it will still count a huge chunk of your grade. So be careful with that. All right, so how does it work out? Say whatever exam you're looking for. Say if you're on your first exam, maybe you had I don't know, 5 true falses and 8 multiple choice and 8 short answer and 5 calculate. Okay, something like that. Okay, well, if I look at that and I add all those up, that's like 26 questions, right? And that's probably a pretty good sized exam 1. But when you think about it, you had over an hour probably to take exam 1, right? Unless you're a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class. But most of my classes are 2-day-a-week classes. So you had an hour and 15 minutes to take exam 1 and do 26 questions. Well, for the final exam, it's a 2-hour test, by the way. 2 hours. Okay. So if you took 3 tests and they were all an hour and 15 minutes, well, that is 3 hours and 45 minutes worth of material, right? So when you think about that, I can't do this, right? I can't give you that large of a test again. So what I do is I pare these down. Okay, what does that mean? It means that instead of 5 true falses, maybe you get 3. Okay, and it just depends. If you had a bunch of matching, you might still have a bunch of matching because matching doesn't take very long. Okay, but instead of 8 multiple choice, maybe you only have, I don't know, 4 multiple choice. And then instead of 8 short answers, maybe you have 5 short answers, and maybe I keep 3 of those. So now, calculation problem. So now you've got like 8 plus 7, what is that, 15 questions. Okay, 15 questions for each exam would give you 45 questions total, and that's much more doable in a 2-hour period, right? So I might even pare it down more. So basically what I would expect, unless it's like a matching or something like that, is I would expect to have 10 to 15 questions from each exam's material. Okay, and then if we had some new material at the end, you might have 2 or 3 questions off of that as well. It just depends on where our semester cut, for exam 3, and if I managed to slide all the material into exam 3, or if we still had some new stuff going on, then it makes a difference, right? So we'll just think about it that way. All right, so 10 to 15 questions from each exam's material, and the format will be the same or similar to your normal exams. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that if you're used to seeing some true-false questions on your exams, then you'll probably see some true-false questions on your final. The thing to remember is that all material from the course is fair game on a final exam. Okay, for the final. So what does that mean? It means, like, if you were looking at exam 1 and you said, oh my goodness, she didn't make us do a question about, I don't know, census. What is a census? Just because I didn't make you do a question about census on exam 1 does not mean that you won't have a question about census on the final exam, especially if your if this is stats, the first test or so is a lot of vocabulary. So if you've got a lot of vocabulary, don't think just because I didn't ask it on exam 1 doesn't means that I won't ask it on the final. So in other words, don't just study your exams. Don't just study your exams. You should study your exams, but you should also look at your notes, if there are any videos for the course, if there's test reviews for that particular material. Homework sections, anything we did is fair game. So just because it wasn't on the exam the first time we took it does not mean that it won't be on there the second time. So be aware and be able to do that and go back and pick up some of that material, especially if there's vocabulary sections, things that could be easily matched or multiple choice or something like that for the content, then that is possible to be there. Okay, so I think that's the basics for the formatting for the final exam, so that you'll kind of know what's coming and what to expect. For review questions, again, go back and look at all of your exams. I can repost some of those reviews, so I'll put those into the learning management systems. So look at those. Look back at any videos you might have or class notes and stuff like that. And I will also come through and do just a short video about content. I'm going to try to get that done just so that you can see it and hopefully answer any questions. So stay tuned for hopefully part 2 of this video where I talk about content questions. All right, thanks.